everybody? Welcome back to the Fully Inflated Football Podcast. I am your host, Marcus Whitman. We have a full slate of Week 5 NFL games to run through. We're going to get into the mailbag. So great show ahead. Before we hop in, though, I do want to remind you that this show is brought to you by my Patreon. That's patreon.com/ThatFranchiseGuy. If you want to support the show, and more importantly, if you want to get in on exclusive content like my weekly picks and exclusive film rooms when I have time to get around to them, and of course, get access to the exclusive Patreon mailbag on this very show where you can guarantee that I read your mailbag questions here on the podcast, head over to patreon.com/ThatFranchiseGuy to support the show and get bonus content. If you don't want to do that, just hit that like button down below. We'll also support the show. Also, if you're listening to the audio version on your podcasting services, make sure to leave a review and rate the podcast. Okay, housekeeping complete. Let's talk some ball. Big week of Week 5 football. That was a nuts week. A lot of franchise-changing events, from the Dak injury to the benching of Jimmy Garoppolo, the Falcons cleaning house. Lots of stuff going on. Lots of stuff to talk about. We'll get into all of it. The first game I want to talk about is the Cowboys-Giants game. And let's just get the Giants out of the way so we can focus on the big news with Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys. So as far as the Giants go, they're fine. They've actually, I think, shown week-to-week improvement. Reminds me a little bit of the Miami Dolphins last year, ironically with a Belichickian defensive-minded, not that Joe Judge is defensive-minded, but Brian Flores, Joe Judge, kind of going the New England Belichick way type of route. Miami last year was a train wreck to start the season and gradually showed improvements. I think we're seeing a similar thing here for the Giants. It's happening a little quicker than it happened in Miami. The defense has actually done some things. They went up against a really good Cowboys offense this week, so that was a tough matchup. But Blake Martinez is actually playing pretty well in that scheme, really being more aggressive as a run defender. James Bradbury's been great as a corner. You're getting Kyler Fackrell stepping up on the edge there. They're doing some things on the defensive side of the ball that are nice. As far as the offense goes, it's not ideal. I still don't think Daniel Jones is the answer. Still more turnovers in this game. Only one start in his career without a turnover. And even in that one start, he did lose a fumble. They just happened to fall on it. So, you probably stick with Daniel Jones unless the Giants get the number 1 overall pick. Then I think you take Trevor Lawrence. But yeah, the Giants showing some gradual improvement. I don't have all bad things to say about the Giants all the time. Now, let's talk about Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys. And it puts me in a tough spot because I've been extremely critical of Dak, and I want to be sensitive to this. Like, it sucks. Like, I never want to, have a big take like this and then have a guy have I don't think it'll be a career-threatening injury, but a significant injury nonetheless. Something that will be a pain in the ass, quite literally, for Dak to come back from this thing. And that take, of course, is that the Cowboys don't really need Dak for $40 million. The take has been that you put Andy Dalton in there, that allows you to buy some other starters on the defensive side of the ball, and this ship is going to roll just fine. And you never want that to play out because of injury. Now, if I'm a Cowboys fan, I don't think you need to panic. I do still believe that. I think Dak has a lot of flaws as a player that people haven't discussed. I do think that Andy Dalton, as we saw in that game, can step up and do what Dak does, and that is put the ball up in a position for these receivers to make plays. Dalton will have his flaws. Ironically, I think his flaws are very similar to Dak Prescott in that if you pressure him, he's not always going to sense pressure. He's not always going to make the great play, but he can process the defense. He can get rid of the ball. He can throw an accurate ball downfield. He doesn't have a elite arm. The only difference is Dak is a little bit faster. That's frankly the largest difference to me between Dak Prescott and Andy Dalton the last time he had a unit around him similar to what he'll have here in Dallas. It's not exciting. We've gone years without seeing Andy Dalton play at a high level, but I do think he can get back very quickly to what he was in 2015, 2016, which was a consensus top 15, at worst top 20 quarterback in the league, which frankly is not far off from where I actually perceive Dak Prescott. So as far as what this means for Dak, because I think that the Cowboys will continue to roll. I talked about it in my power rankings. Not that they're rolling, but I think the offense will keep up. It's a matter of the defense stepping up now. But, I think that they will very much compete in the NFC East, as I discussed in my power rankings. But as far as what should the Cowboys do? What does the future mean for Dak and the Cowboys here? Because that's the big question. Because I don't think anyone really expects this team to go and win a Super Bowl this year now that Dak is gone. It'd be a pretty ridiculous story there. I believe what should and will happen here is Dak Prescott will recover. I think, sometimes these breaks look worse than they are. Gordon Hayward, for example, came back a lot sooner than people expected for the Celtics. I think he'll recover. It looked like a lower bone fracture, obviously. We don't need to get into the details here. It was a compound ankle fracture. So his ankle is basically split in half. And, I'm not going to act like a doctor, but I do believe in modern medicine, and I believe in Dak Prescott's ability to rehab this thing and come over this adversity and get back. I do think that will be the case. Now, financially, market speaking, I don't think that he is going to get the big, 4-year, $150 million contract or whatever he was going to get. I don't think he gets that off of this injury. To begin with, I don't think he fully answered those questions in the 4 starts he had about, is he worth the paycheck? Because some people have that question, some people don't. I certainly do. I think he put up a lot of great numbers. He was playing great. I take the strong opinion that a lot of quarterbacks are going to play great here, and we'll see how that plays out with Andy Dalton. I don't think that Dak necessarily answered those questions, but more importantly, obviously, how's the ankle? How healthy is he going to be? Do you commit to a guy as your franchise quarterback, both financially, but also that means ruling out other options to be your franchise quarterback? Do you commit to that without seeing him play on the ankle after this thing? So I don't think he gets that big contract offer. And that sucks for Dak. Like, why did the football gods decide this had to happen to the one quarterback that has, kind of been doubted and probably did deserve a contract extension of some sort and did gamble on himself and play on the franchise tag? It sucks that the one player that was on the franchise tag, that the fear is always that you're going to have a career-ending injury when you're on the franchise tag. This had to happen to Dak. It just sucks. Life is a bitch. It's not fair to everyone. But all we can do is the best with what we got and move forward. And I think in Dak's case, what's going to happen is he will get franchise tagged again by the Dallas Cowboys. I don't think Dallas is going to, A, like we said, want to commit that big check to him, but B, be in a position where they're prepared to let him go straight up, which is what would happen if they do not franchise tag him or extend him. I think they franchise tag him again. That means the cap hit would be about $41 million, which is a lot of money, but I think in this case it is worth that price to get that placeholder on Dak. And then, I think it's very realistic as well that Dalton plays pretty well. The Cowboys might even make the playoffs. And I think there's a decent chance that they could retain Andy Dalton for a 1-year, say, $12 million contract. Now, that is $52 million at the quarterback position. It would certainly not help their free agency on the defensive side of the ball. But at the end of the day, that quarterback is all that matters, and they have entered an emergency state of figuring out what they need to do at that quarterback position. I don't think drafting a quarterback is an answer. I mean, maybe you go and trade for a Matt Ryan or something like that and give up on Dak. That is on the table. I don't think I would say that's likely. And the other thing there is if Dalton does play as well as I potentially expect him to play, does Dalton get offers from somewhere else? Does it become too expensive? Very, very possible, but the league does not have a very high perception of Andy Dalton. And I think it's likely that they would look at his success and say, well, he's thrown to Amari Cooper, he's thrown to Michael Gallup, he's thrown to CeeDee Lamb. They got a tight end emerging, they got Zeke, they got a run game. I think a lot of people in the league would look at that and then look at a rookie class with a bunch of options, look at a free agency class, a trade market that potentially has Matt Ryan, Matthew Stafford. I think there's a decent chance that there wouldn't be much of a market for Andy Dalton. But But that all will play out. I think that, to me, in my mind, is the most likely scenario, is that Dak and Dalton are back here next year, that Dalton plays well this year, that Dak's back on the franchise tag, and they're exactly where they were heading into this year at a kind of prove-it type of season for Dak Prescott. It's really unfortunate for Dak that this year could not be that year, but here we are, and that is my stance on the Dak-Dalton conversation. I don't want to take a victory lap. Well, I certainly can't yet. We have yet to see this play out. It's going to be tough for me because if Dalton ends up playing really well, that's going to be a big win for me, because I kind of went against the grain and said that, Dak is very much a product of the receiving group there, and I think a lot of quarterbacks would have a lot of success there. And I think there's a decent chance we see that with Dalton. I'm excited to see that all play out, but it's also just going to be a somber note because of the consequences of how we got to witness it. So there's the Dallas spiel. Let's move on. The next game is Tampa Bay and Chicago, the last night's Thursday night game. Kind of an ugly game, to be sure. Not a lot of offense in this game, which I kind of expected. For those on the Patreon picks, I didn't take a hard stance on who would win this game. But I did think it was going to be close, and I definitely thought that the spread was too much, given Tampa Bay without Godwin and a banged-up Mike Evans, 4 points against a Chicago team that, say what you will, keeps virtually every game close because of that defense. And that defense shined for Chicago. They look really good on that side of the ball. Offensively, Foles is just such a bipolar quarterback. It was really bad for a good portion of this game, and then he turned it on late and did enough to win this game. They're getting David Montgomery going, which is nice. Get that kind of tough ability to grind out yardage that is not there to begin with, because they're not the best blocking team. Chicago's a solid team. They're going to basically play in a bunch of close games that will rely on either a big defensive touchdown or Nick Foles being the best version of himself if they want to beat good teams. And it's a fluky formula. I think the Bears are a team that are a solid football team. I don't think as a team they're a fluke, but on a week-to-week basis, whether or not they win big games is going to be fluky. Because that's a big question, are the Bears a fluke? They're the second worst 4-1 team by DVOA, which is a popular metric since 2001. So I look at their games as a bit of a coin toss because there's a lot of moving pieces there, a lot of factors. But they're a good, not great football team to me. Now, on the Tampa Bay side, I find them much more interesting because I think their range of outcomes is much more high and low. I look at Tampa Bay's future and it has so much potential. And not future as in next year. I'm talking about this season because you got a 43-year-old quarterback. You got to talk about this season. And it's on both sides of the ball. Because I see, on the defensive side of the ball, I see week-to-week growth, which is something I certainly predicted because of how young that unit is. The secondary is, everyone is under the age of 25. Some of them are rookies with Antoine Winfield. A lot of them are second-year players, Sean Murphy-Bunting, Jamel Dean, Carlton Davis in his third year. It's a very young secondary, and that's a position group that takes time to mold together. It often takes multiple years. And other than Antoine Winfield, this is year 2 of that. And I think that those guys are learning their communication and their scheme and how they can all play off each other. The coaching staff is learning how to deploy these guys. How are they going to use a big-bodied Carlton Davis? How do they use Antoine Winfield, who's this versatile safety who can move all around the field? So they're very much growing. The front seven is great. Now, there's a lot of, like I said, high-end outcomes here and low-end outcomes. Vita Vea is dealing with a significant ankle injury. And as of this recording, I have not heard the final news there. There is potential for him to miss the rest of the season, which would really hurt this front seven. They would still be a good front seven. But he is the number one reason they are the number one run defense in the NFL. He eats blocks. He pushes. He opens up things for, to me, the best linebacker duo in the league, which obviously helps. But Vita Vea is a huge piece of what they do as the number one run defense in the league. But beyond that, he has made massive strides as a pass rusher. He is, a top 5 pass rusher at this point as an interior pressure getter. He is just such a load, and he comes off the ball harder than I thought he ever would coming out of Washington. So to lose that force as a run defense, which is a big strength of this team, but also as a pass rush, you take him away, and all of a sudden you're not as scared of Shaquille Barrett. You're not as scared of Jason Pierre-Paul and a 73-year-old Ndamukong Suh. So there's a lot of high-end upside with that defense as far as how do they grow, what does the Vita Vea injury look like, and Devin White as well is a linebacker in year 2, which is another position that takes time. What can he be by the end of the year? And he's growing on a week-to-week basis. Offensively, same deal in a lot of ways. Brady, first year in the scheme, a quarterback that, as I said, coming into the year, it's going to take some time as a very much timing thrower. It's going to take him time to develop a chemistry. And I think he has absolutely developed that chemistry with Mike Evans. We know it's there with Gronk, but I think the highest upside is going to be with Chris Godwin, who's elite after the catch. He's going to be the guy that changes this offense from what it is now to a consistent force and a headache, because Chris Godwin is the guy that gets open on slants, crossers, the guy you throw bubble screens to, the guy you run jet sweeps with, the guy that can run a 15-yard out and be a consistent guy there at getting open on that, the guy that can be a heady player on shorter routes and be the option route guy for Tom Brady, be his Julian Edelman, if you will. He has not been in there, and that was probably the number one source of optimism for this entire Bucs offense is Chris Godwin. He's dealing with nagging injuries. He's not been able to get out there, so they need to get him out there. They need this offensive line to continue to grow together, and Tom Brady to continue to develop this chemistry, because this offense also has a very high upside. They just aren't there yet, and I didn't think they would be to start the year. It's tough to see that kind of play out and the offense struggle, but I do think the Bucs are still a team, and maybe this is the week, potentially, to get in on Super Bowl futures for them, because I don't know what their price is at, but I think that they, or even if they lose to Green Bay this weekend, because I don't think Vita Vea is going to be in there. I don't think Chris Godwin, he might be up in the air. Especially if they lose to Green Bay this weekend, could be a great opportunity to get in on sort of a long shot future, because this is a team that I thought really was going to start slow and get the ball rolling as the year goes on. So let's keep going. We've got the Raiders-Chiefs game. Man, was this an exciting game in the first half, and then it slowed down. Really surprised to see that game slow down. I bet on the over in this game. It was 56.5 points. That was one of my picks this week. They almost hit it at halftime. It was like 48 at halftime, 24-24. And I was like, oh, we're good. And then all of a sudden, we're heading into the fourth quarter, and it's still 24-24. I'm like, is anyone else going to score here? Like, what's going on? It was a game of two halves, really. So in the first half, it was the story of Patrick Mahomes going off against a Raiders defense that looked, as I described on Twitter, like when you turn down all the sliders on Madden and you turn down game speed and the defense is like playing in slow motion and they can't cover and they can't tackle. That's what the Raiders, and they can't pass rush. That's what the Raiders looked like in the first half. And Patrick Mahomes was just dicing up. He had another like 70-yard touchdown called back on a holding call, which, by the way, rough day for Kaleki Asemele. Man, he wants to, speaking of video games, he would like to hit the dashboard button on this game, because one of the first plays of the game, he gets that holding call, calls back the beautiful 70-yard bomb that Mahomes and Tyreek Hill connected on, and then like 2 plays later, he goes down with an injury, potentially, looked very serious. I think he got carted off with a lower body injury. So I don't know the news on that. Looked potentially season-threatening, but rough day for Kaleki Asemele, the star guard that's been really good for them. But yeah, the Chiefs looked outstanding in the first half. The Raiders defense looked like the Raiders defense that I prescribe on this channel, which is one of the worst in the league. No pass rush, bad coverage, bad tackling, all of that. And then the second half comes, and the Raiders, by the way, we'll get to the Raiders side of the ball, but the second half comes, and the Chiefs shut down. The Raiders pass rush picked up. Mahomes was running for his life, and the coverage was really good. And it was really surprising to see that happen. And Mahomes was not good in the second half of this game. You can make a case he was a big reason that they did not win this game. Now, he turned it back on late in the game in heroics, but really not a good second half for Patrick Mahomes at all. Was not playing in rhythm, was trying to do a little bit too much, if you ask me. Forced a really bad interception. So, there's concerns there for the Chiefs. especially like the like the drive to drive continuity. It's not always there. I think Mahomes can play like that. We saw that against the Ravens. It's hard to explain why that gets turned off. It was the same against the Patriots. He really has not looked the same against the Patriots and the Raiders as he did against the Ravens. And maybe it's because the Ravens were blitzing him so much. Maybe the answer is sit back a little more, cover more, and trust your coverage guys and let the front four get after him. Because Mahomes really dissected those Ravens blitzes. But anyway, I would need to dive more into the film to confirm that. That's just my speculation. But yeah, Mahomes has not been playing in rhythm very well the last 2 weeks, and it's certainly concerning. We picked the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl because Mahomes is supposed to be this, above everyone else, elite quarterback that if all else fails, they can lean back on him to be better than anyone else in the league. And you're obviously going to be able to lean on that in most games. But if they did happen to run into, say, the Packers or the Seahawks, I think both Russ and Rodgers are playing at a more consistent, higher level than Mahomes is right now. And I'm not quite ready to change that ranking of Mahomes number one, but the last 2 weeks, it's certainly gotten the wheels turning on that discussion. Now, let's talk about the Raiders, because Raiders fans are rightfully really excited about this win. Now, do I think that this defensive showing from them is going to continue? I really don't. I don't like the personnel in the front for the pass rush. They don't have an alpha. They have some guys that can do some nice things. And the coverage unit, I just don't trust. I know they played well in this game against the Chiefs, but their record is just, not win-loss record, but the secondary here, their resume is not particularly good. I need to see more success from guys like Damon Arnett, LaMarcus Joyner, Jonathan Abrams, these guys that are, kind of unproven in the secondary here for the Raiders. But for the offense, really interesting night or afternoon for the Raiders offense. Derek Carr had his best game as a Raider in a long, long time. He wasn't perfect. He made some mistakes, had a bad pick. Certainly was not perfect. I don't think anyone is expecting Derek Carr to be perfect, right? But he's got all this help around him. Can he lead a top 5 offense and a playoff team, which ultimately I think is what this Raiders team's going to have to be. They're going to have to play like this on offense most of the time. And I'm just excited to see what that answer becomes. I'm not going to say yes or no right now. I will acknowledge that Derek Carr was really good in this game. The biggest criticism of Derek Carr by a landslide is aggressiveness, particularly on third down, but it applies on every snap. Just not showing that willingness to push the ball downfield. He's got the physical traits to do it. But for whatever reason, he just hasn't always done that. In the last 2 weeks, he hasn't done that. But this week, he gets Henry Ruggs back. He gets a lot of time. I mean, their offensive line is phenomenal. Their offensive weaponry is really good. I wouldn't say I have like a top 5 receiving core or anything, but you got Josh Jacobs, who's a stud. You got Darren Waller. You got Henry Ruggs. You got some other receivers. You got Renfro, and Edwards is making some plays. Nelson Aguilar is a starting caliber player that's been really solid for this team. You've got depth at tight end. You got Foster Moreau, and Jason Witten is doing his thing on third downs. He's been a nice friend for Derek Carr to move kind of third and short stuff. So they have a lot of weaponry for him, and quite possibly the best offensive line in the league. So what I want to see with Derek Carr is utilize the entire field on a consistent week-to-week basis. And I just want to see an answer to, was Derek Carr pushing the ball downfield to Henry Ruggs, was that a response to a week of preparation of knowing that they need to be aggressive to beat the Chiefs, or was that the nature of this offense and how Derek Carr is going to proceed? Because they really were aggressive. They were pushing the ball downfield. Carr was just throwing it up for Ruggs, and Ruggs made some amazing, he made a ridiculous catch in double coverage that I didn't know he was capable of as far as a contested catch kind of guy. Henry Ruggs looking like a great pick for this team. So the question coming into this podcast, was I impressed by Derek Carr? Yes, for this game. Now, Raiders fans starting to want an apology on me not buying into this offense because of Derek Carr. I'm not going to apologize. It doesn't erase the last 2 years where he's been a check down machine, where he's been one of the least reliable quarterbacks on third down, where he has no playmaking instincts at all, and I think some of that is still shown up this year. I'm not going to apologize about that, but I'm going to be open to the idea that he's got everything around him to help Carr lead to this kind of top 10, top 5 elite offense that the Raiders are going to need to be to become a playoff team. I don't think they'll compete with the Chiefs. I'm not going to take that reaction here. Raiders had a great day. They beat the Chiefs. Good on you. I still think the Chiefs win 14, 15 games this year, and I don't think the Raiders get close to winning this division. All right. Next up, we have Houston, Jacksonville. I just want to take a sip of water here. So this game was fine to watch. So not a whole lot happened. The Jags are just kind of hit or miss on offense right now. Minshew is fun to watch. They're a solid offense. The defense stinks. It's been more of the same. I don't really have anything new to say about the Jags. DJ Chark is really good. James Robinson is fun. They're going to have a new coach next year. They might be drafting a quarterback. It's the Jags are just kind of going through the motions at this point. If anyone is truly standing out to me, I'd bring it up. Laviska Shenault looks like a good pick for sure. But they're kind of going through the motions. Sidney Jones, finding a guy like him on waivers. That's the kind of stuff the Jags need to do in a season like this is find some pieces that they can build around. Sidney Jones, we've talked about him before. He's a former second-round pick for the Eagles who has been trying to get healthy in his career. He looks healthy now. He's playing great. So could Sidney Jones and C.J. Henderson be a dynamic cornerback duo someday? Potentially. That's what the Jags are doing. They're trying to find pieces. They're trying to build. So that's all I got to say on them. Now for the Texans, this really was that hoorah week. Bill O'Brien's gone. Like, we got this team. Like, let's get back on track. The witch is dead type of deal. And it showed. They were tackling so much better. Romeo Crennel takes over as the interim head coach, as the defensive guy. If you want some optimism here, the big thing with Bill O'Brien has been ever since he took over as GM, and this is something Brett Coleman talked about, how O'Brien was never a terrible head coach, but once he got those GM duties, he was just so distracted. The game plans were broken. The team was never fully prepared. And now they're separating that and having a coach that just says, get the team on the same page, get them ready to play. And that's what happened. The defense played much better. They played really well against a Jags offense that's done some nice things this year. They were tackling so much better. That's the big thing. The discipline was there. The game plan was just, even though it's the same defensive coordinator, it's like the overall, theme here was, you got, like, we're a good football team. Like, we need to play smart. And, they did. They played fast and smart. And they won. I was actually much more impressed by the Texans' defense. J.J. Watt was really good this week. Offensively, they kind of did their thing. I think they're going to be trying to find a new identity. I couldn't even tell you who's calling the plays right now, to be honest. I think Bill O'Brien actually forfeited that duty, but I'm not up to date on who the offensive guru in Houston is right now. It was a very much a vertical passing game, which it probably should be when you have Deshaun Watson and Brandon Cooks, who was great in this game. You got Fuller and Stills, Randall Cobb, not a deep threat, but I think they're kind of trying to learn on the fly here. But if they can get an identity on offense and play like this every week defensively, I think they can creep back into the AFC South race. They need the Titans to start losing for them to even get close, but it's only week 6. Like, they have time. They've got most of their difficult games out of the way, too. They're going to get to play the Jags again. They're going to get opportunities to beat the Titans and beat the Colts, which are going to be huge games for them. I'm not ready to write the Texans off quite yet, but they are going to have to very quickly figure out the schemes here for the offense and really get this team back on track. I don't think it's out of the question quite yet. It's an interesting coaching fire because this is a very legitimate playoff contending team. And then let's move on to the Cincinnati-Baltimore game. This was an interesting game. Sam Monson of PFF was talking about how it seemed very clear that the Ravens have taken this week to basically force themselves to test themselves on this idea that they can't play a game where they have to pass the ball a bunch, right? It's something I've been very critical of the Ravens. Many other people, it's if you have two eyeballs, you can tell when they fall behind, they're not the same team. And I went into this game seeing what Sam said, and that was very true. Like, they were up big, they were aggressive, they went for it on like 4th and 6, up by 17 in the first half. They were passing the ball a lot. And they didn't run the ball with Lamar much at all. And they very much were like, let's act like we're down 14 points for the majority of this game. And it frankly didn't look all that pretty. But I think that that's going to be a good move for them because you're experimenting with passing concepts. You're getting Lamar more reps in those moments because, whatever you want to say about Lamar, to be a guy that's going to keep pace with Patrick Mahomes in a shootout, it helps to have experience playing in a game script like that, right? Lamar might have actual traits-based problems with doing something like that, but it's also experience. Like when they just run the ball 40 times a game and just blow out all these crappy teams, Lamar's not getting experience to drop back in the pocket 30 times a game. And I think that this was really smart by the Ravens. They're like, let's just do it. Let's run a traditional offense. Let's see how Lamar does. Let's let him get tape on himself and continue to develop as a passer because they know long game, if Lamar is going to be the quarterback of the Baltimore Ravens when he's 35 years old, if he's going to be this elite franchise long-term quarterback, that's going to be a big part of their game. They might not ever have to erase the read option stuff. I'm not saying he's going to get injured and you got to stop running with him at all, but I do think there's an element of being a sustainable quarterback being more of a passing guy. So very interesting. Lamar did make some plays. He made some really nice plays out of structure. There's times he tried to do too much. He forced some things. He had turnover-worthy plays in this game. He had inaccurate throws. But you learn from your mistakes. And there's nothing Lamar did in this game that my own evaluation did not already exist, right? Like, I know that he bails from clean pockets too much. I know that he can be accurate throwing outside the numbers. I know that his decision-making out of structure, I'm not even going to criticize that part of his game, but, there's parts of being a pocket passer that aren't elite for Lamar Jackson, and they're trying to get him there. And I'm not ruling out, I never have ruled out that he can get there. So an interesting game. There's people reacting and saying, oh, you see how bad Lamar was throwing 30 times a game. People that have listened to my channel weren't surprised by how he looked in that game script, but I think it's smart by Baltimore to he's not going to just fix those things if you come out and run read option 15 times a game. So I respect what Baltimore did. That's what smart organizations do is they figure out their problems and they get better at them. And I think they'll do this again this year. I think they'll take this approach against bad teams again. They clearly just outmatch the crappy teams in this league. Like the Bengals didn't stand a chance. They couldn't block anybody at all. So that's a good transition to the Bengals side of this. And just sitting there watching Red Zone, they really only showed those really bad highlights of Joe Burrow, which I think got people really against Joe Burrow for a little bit. And even myself, I was like, wow, Joe Burrow, he's getting wrecked out there. Like every time they switch over there, he's getting sacked, he's fumbling, he threw a pick. But when you really watch this game play by play, there's nothing to take away. It really was as bad as you would think. The Bengals, Burrow was under pressure every single snap. And the snaps that he did get some time to throw, he was fine. And even the ones where he was getting crazy pressured, like he was still able to make some things happen. I don't think any quarterback in the NFL would have had a remote amount of success playing on that unit. And it's not just the offensive line. The receivers haven't been particularly good for the Bengals either. AJ Green is a shell of himself. And that's an overused phrase, but it's really true. Like he looks like the frame of AJ Green, but that's not AJ Green. He's not running routes hard. He gave up on that jump ball that Joe Burrow threw. The interception he had, I'm not trying to excuse this from Burrow. It was an overthrow and frankly just not a very smart decision. Definitely a trying to do too much moment from Burrow. But I will say, it was basically a zero blitz. Burrow had a hand in his face immediately. And it could be up to Burrow to set that protection differently. It could be up to the offensive line because On a zero blitz, you don't want the pressure to come up the middle. You want the edge guys to come through if you don't have the added protection. But also Burrow could have been like, hey, tight end, like, can you come in here and, help this protection? Like, Burrow could have done some stuff there, rookie stuff. That's pretty high expectations for Burrow in his fifth start to do that, but I think he's capable of doing that, and maybe next time he will. So that play, there was obvious pressure. They didn't have enough numbers to block that blitz. And Burrow said, you know what, I will just let these guys get through, and I'm going to throw off my back foot. I'm going to throw a jump ball to A.J. Green because he's 6'4", he's a badass. I like my chances. And he overthrew it a little bit, but A.J. Green literally stopped. Like, he didn't look for the ball. He didn't go try to break it up. He watched it go, not way over his head, but over his head. He just watched it. He watched Marcus Peters catch it, and then he didn't even try to tackle Peters after. Like, he had a deliberate effort to, like, get away. He was like, that's not my job. Very concerning stuff from A.J. Green. I've always thought of him as a really great team player and all this stuff, but, something weird's going on there with A.J. Green. I don't know. But yeah, Burrow just didn't have much of a chance. Obviously, he didn't increase his standing this week. He made some mistakes. He got sacked so many times. And I've talked about this. I'm begging the Cincinnati Bengals, because you guys know I am a heavy believer in Joe Burrow, that he can be a top 5 quarterback in this league very quickly if they get him an offensive line. Please, though, Cincinnati, do the right thing. Do everything you can this offseason to get him an offensive line. I don't care if you got to trade Jesse Bates. I don't care if you got to trade anybody other than Jonah Williams. Get this man an offensive line, and he will kick ass for years to come. And I don't want to watch him play against the Steelers twice a year. I don't want to watch him play this Ravens team again. The hits that he's taking, it's not just the number of hits. These are like really severe hits to his back, to his head, to his knees. It's very reminiscent of Andrew Luck when he was back, when they didn't have a good offensive line in front of him. Don't take Joe Burrow away from football fans, Cincinnati. Please, I'm begging you, from myself and I'm sure many other people. I want to see Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson twice a year. I want to see Joe Burrow. We'll see where Baker goes and whoever inevitably becomes the next star quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers. I want to see Joe Burrow go battle with this AFC North in a couple of years. I don't want to see him spending time on IR. So there's the spiel on that game. I'm going to run through the Cardinals-Jets game a little quicker here. I'll be honest, I didn't watch every play of this game. I sat there in the second quarter, like after the seventh inside dive from Frank Gore, which is 7 inside dives from Frank Gore, too many, that go for like 3 yards. I'm just sitting there like, why am I watching Joe Flacco hand the ball off to Frank Gore behind a bunch of offensive linemen that aren't going to be here next year, throwing to Barrios and something called Jeff Smith? Why am I watching this? Just to see if Isaiah Simmons gets on the field for Arizona? So yeah, I skipped through this game a little quicker. I'll be honest. I always am honest, even if it's brutally so. I did watch the Arizona side of the ball. Basically the way I describe this is the Cards did what happens when an NFL team shows up to play against the New York Jets, and that's win by 3 or 4 scores. Arizona, I feel like they're still trying to figure out everything here. They started to push the ball downfield a lot better this week, which I do really respect. Kyler, he's missing some throws. I think if you want to, at this point in his career, have a criticism of Kyler, it is working over the middle of the field. There's been a lot of batted balls trying to throw over the middle. He's 5'9" on a good day, frankly. Russ is 5'10", and you watch Kyler and Russ, and I want to see them. I want to see when they play. I want to see them get together after the game, because on tape, Kyler looks a good bit shorter than Russell Wilson, which is saying something. But picture that, trying to throw over 6'4", 6'5" offensive linemen, often 6'5" defensive linemen as well, 6'6", 6'7" defensive linemen. Throwing over the middle of the field is the one aspect where kind of having that towering view is going to help you command that aspect of the field. It's not that he can't throw that part of the field. It's just I don't think it's going to be a real strength, and frankly could be an area where he's just never going to be very consistent because he's left balls too high because he does kind of need to throw with a little more arc to get it over the top, which can be hard to be accurate there. That's why it's so important to have DeAndre Hopkins here, who is an elite outside presence, because while he's not great over the middle of the field, Kyler down the sidelines is elite. Like his ability to rip a ball, wherever his body is, he's the kind of guy that, like I like to say, can put the ball wherever he wants, whenever he wants. He can be drifting right, left, in the pocket, whatever. He can rip the ball. He has a legitimately, I'm going to shy away from using elite arm, but great arm. And his ball placement is great. He's very similar to Russell Wilson as a football player. And he really opened it up late in this game, took some shots to DeAndre Hopkins. Just let that man go make a play. I mean, Hopkins, is there even another receiver that's competing for the best receiver in football this year other than DeAndre Hopkins? I mean, Devontae Adams, it's a shame he got injured. He could get back to that. I think Keenan Allen has actually been incredible for the Chargers, but not as good as DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, Hopkins has the crown right now for sure. So that's really all I got to say about the game. The Cardinals, they got a gift playing the Jets this week. They're back to 3-2. They got to get back to work. They got to continue to develop. The defense needs to be better, and they have playoff expectations, and I think they can do it. It's just a matter of showing us. Carolina, Atlanta. Who do we want to talk about? What side of the ball do we want to talk about first here? Because these are two very different organizations right now in the NFC South. I'm going to start with the bad, and that is the Falcons. So this is the game that got Dan Quinn fired finally. I'll take a victory lap here. I dug an old tweet up from January 2017 when Kyle Shanahan was starting to kind of interview for head coaching offers when the Falcons made that NFC Championship run. And they were talking about what teams should be hiring Kyle Shanahan. And I responded to that tweet. It was a Bleacher Report tweet. And I said, and I talked about it back at the time, that the Falcons would be dumb to keep Dan Quinn and let Kyle Shanahan go, because it was so clear that their success was offensive oriented. And not just that, it was Kyle Shanahan oriented, because Matt Ryan without Kyle Shanahan is fine. But the second he got Kyle Shanahan, he won the MVP. I don't think that's a coincidence. Atlanta, I think they would have won a Super Bowl if they made that move. I really do. I think that this offense has been so rudderless since Shanahan left. And then defensively, they've never developed. Frankly, they've gotten worse every year under Dan Quinn. That should not be the case. Dan Quinn is a defensive-minded head coach. As much as the players like him, the players need to develop. You need Takk McKinley to emerge as a star pass rusher. You need other defensive linemen other than Grady Jarrett to step up. You need these secondary members to develop in this cover 3 scheme. And it never happened. So if he's this great coach, where was the growth on the one side of the ball that he's responsible for? Meanwhile, the offense stays rudderless. It was just going nowhere fast. I thought they should have fired him last season. But he's gone. I think he'll get a defensive coaching coordinator job somewhere. If there's any takeaways from this game for Atlanta, is that Todd Gurley kind of came out of the graveyard this week. I've been harsh on Todd Gurley. He looked good. He's not what he used to be. He's very clearly not. Still got good vision. I think he's potentially adapting his game a little bit. He's trying to run through guys a little more. He's using the stiff arm a lot. He's hitting holes as hard as he can. He doesn't have that same element of explosion, but he had some bigger runs this week and some broken tackles, and he's playing much better. I think maybe he's readjusting, retuning his game as a more inferior athlete to what he used to be, because very clearly he doesn't have the same burst. He used to be really explosive. It used to be like he'd hit that hole and like no one would touch him. That's not Todd Gurley anymore. But if he can change to be this more patient, tough, strength-based runner, good for Todd Gurley for having a rejuvenation. I'm excited to see that. I never root for a guy's injury to be over, a guy's career to be over by injury. But as far as the future of the Falcons goes, they're in a really tough spot. It's not like the Texans who fired their coach, where it's like, okay, we're gonna have a 1, maybe 2 year rebuild. We're gonna keep the core players here. We're gonna keep Deshaun Watson, most notably Laramie Tunsil, and eventually we'll have a high upside future with a core of young guys with Watson and Tunsil and maybe Reed on the defensive side of the ball or whatever. Whereas Atlanta, it's more of a, just as the owner said, full rebuild, blow it up rebuild. And to me, that signals to the rest of the league, Matt Ryan's available, Julio Jones is available, basically anyone over the age of 28. Alex Mack, defensively they're pretty young. Maybe they would trade like Ricardo Allen. But it's like, people are available here. We are going to take a completely clean slate. We are going to bring in a new coach with a new general manager where they can have their own vision. And I think it would be pretty dumb for them to... Not dumb. I think there's a way it could be done where Matt Ryan and Julio stay there and they turn it around a little quicker because there's some talent on the roster. But I think we've seen enough of Matt Ryan to know that things got to be pretty perfect here. And he is... I'm just going to look this up real quick because I'm curious how... I think he's 35. Let me just do some quick research on the fly. Yeah, he's 35. He'll be 36 when next season starts. This team is not going to get in position to be as perfect as they need to be to win a Super Bowl with Matt Ryan. Now, he could be a mentor type for a guy that you draft, but here's the deal. If you trade Matt Ryan tomorrow, or you bench him and say your value to us is much larger on the trade market if you don't get hurt out there, they could very realistically go 0-16 and get Trevor Lawrence, and that is a turnaround. Now, if you are really going to say we're going to go get Trevor Lawrence and we're going to go 0-16 this year, you have a tough decision to make about Julio Jones. Because to me, the Matt Ryan decision is not all that hard. It's either you shop him. If you can get a first or second round pick for Matt Ryan, no brainer. Even a third round pick, especially if you're getting in Trevor Lawrence. That's a no brainer. I know the contract situation is a mess, but I don't really care. We're going full rebuild here. That cap hit will be gone in a few years. Like, we'll deal with it. I lost my train of thought, but I was going to talk about Julio Jones. You have a tough decision to make there because it's so difficult. Because would you rather get a first-round pick for a 31, 32-year-old Julio Jones who just can't seem to stay on the field these days? Would you rather get that right now? And you take Ryan and Julio Jones off the field for the season, virtually guarantees you can get Trevor Lawrence. You keep those guys out there, you're probably going to win 2 or 3 games. And I just think that it's something to really consider, this whole idea of tanking in a year where you have a generational quarterback prospect. And I would love to see Trevor Lawrence go to Atlanta because they're a well-run, they at least have good ownership. And I'd rather see him go there than the Jets, for sure. And I think Trevor Lawrence says, I look pretty good in a Falcons jersey. Those new Jays, the All Blacks, yeah, I could flaunt the flow in those All Black Jays for sure. That's what I want to see. I want to see Matt Ryan go back to maybe go play with Kyle Shanahan. Maybe Matt Ryan goes to the Chicago Bears like tomorrow. It could happen tomorrow if they really wanted to do it. And then Julio Jones, that's a more difficult decision because you could say, we'll give Trevor Lawrence Julio Jones. Or you could say, you know what, Julio, he can't really stay healthy. We can get some of that money off the books. And we can get a first-round pick that we maybe go use to spend on the offensive line is still kind of young, but, you maybe go spend it on a star defensive player or a younger receiver to grow with Trevor Lawrence for the future. There's a great receiving class coming up. I think we're going to see some interesting decisions being made with the Atlanta Falcons, for sure. They are a very legitimate tank for Trevor. I mean, your season's over. You're not coming back in the NFC. Are you kidding me? There's no freaking way. I would love to see that. I really would. And then for Carolina, their rebuild is underway. And I talk about it every week, but I gotta get some kind of Panthers jersey. I really do, because I really respect the way they're doing this. The second I saw their Hard Knocks and got an inside look to David Tepper, who's a modern thinking, friendly owner that just, he wants to be involved, but he's not going to overstep on the football side of things, but he understands people. He understands modern thinking, and he's an investor. He keeps up with trends in the market, and it's no different as a football owner. Hires a college coach, analytics heavy. They build they built through free agency. They built their offense through free agency, and then they loaded up defensively in the draft. But I think that they think very forward. I just saw their new practice facilities look beautiful. Like, Tepper is all in on the Panthers becoming a respected, well-known franchise and organization. I'm all in on it, and it is trickling down, I think, from ownership to the coaching. The coaching here is incredible. Matt Rule is getting this defense going. I'll apologize again for thinking Matt Rule was an offensive guy. I just assumed coming out of the Big 12 that he was an offensive-minded guy. He's actually a defensive-minded mind. And just in week 4 and 5, he has taken a really super young defense. Most of their starters are under the age of 25, I would say. He's taken a super young defense and getting the most out of these guys, and it's been really fun to see. And offensively, Joe Brady, for Carolina's sake, I hope they can keep him around. I don't think he's going to be a coordinator for much longer. He worked under Sean Payton. He won a championship for LSU, and now he's making the most out of Teddy Bridgewater and Robbie Anderson and Mike Davis. He is legit. I think that he could, by the end of the year, become the premier coaching candidate for sure. And is that someone that Atlanta considers trying to steal from Carolina when they're searching for a head coach? I think he is legit. It would suck for Carolina to lose him, but they'd have to replace him. But yeah, I think Carolina's heading in the right direction. They don't have that high end talent, but they can be a very competent football team this year for sure. And it's good to see them winning now, because I think it's trickling down. The guys have bought in. They're a cohesive team. They're well coached, and it shows, which is very consistent with how I felt about this team coming in. All right, we still got a good amount of games to talk about here. The next one I'm not going to spend a lot of time on, the Rams-Washington game. The Rams are just so solid on both sides of the ball. Excited to see them go against San Francisco on Sunday night. They're a fun team to watch. Their scheme is really fun. McVay is an entertaining watch in himself. He's just so active as a head coach. And then the defense for the Rams is really fun. I mean, Aaron Donald, just appreciate greatness, man. I mean, he's not going to be in the MVP race because of how well these quarterbacks are playing, but he should be. I mean, he has been everywhere. He is very, very much making a case for being the best defensive player in the history of this league. I really do believe that. Like right there with Lawrence Taylor. I mean, he just wrecks game plans. Just absolutely demolishes it. I feel bad for Alex Smith that he had to make his return against Aaron Donald. Just ruthless showing by Aaron Donald. He didn't care about Alex Smith's comeback at all. And the rest of the defense is playing well. Darius Williams had another good game. I talked about this in the power rankings, but the biggest surprise, or not even necessarily surprise, because I knew that McVay is capable of doing this as a really good coach, but the best sign for the Rams and the biggest reason that this is happening is they're getting low-level roster guys to step up, and they've gotten criticism for being this top-heavy team, right? You're paying Jalen Ramsey, Goff, Donald, some of the playmakers. They've got like close to half their salary cap is held up by about 4 or 5 players, and that means you're going to lean on 6th-round picks like Jordan Fuller to play at safety. You're going to lean on undrafted pickups or waiver claims in Justin Hollins to get significant reps at outside linebacker. You're going to lean on Darius Williams, who is an undrafted free agent, to step up at corner. You're going to lean on David Edwards, who's a 4th-round pick, converting from tackle and playing well at guard. All of these positions of weakness where their stars aren't located are stepping up. And that's the biggest reason to me for the Rams' success. And they'll reach a point where these guys get paid. Darius Williams, I'm sure, is up for a contract soon. David Edwards, he's I think in year 2, so he'll be around at guard for a little while. But they're going to have to continue to do this. That's the tough thing about Jared Goff and his contract is, and Goff's playing well. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think he's ever going to be this transcendent quarterback. But that's just when they build this team the way they do, and they give up these first-round picks to get these players. They're going to need these low-level investments to step up, and McVay has clearly confidence in his ability to get the most out of role players, and he's doing such a damn good job of it. And that is one of the most redeeming qualities of coaches, is getting players in the right positions to succeed. I think the NFL agreed between NFL front office personnel. They say that less than 5% of NFL players are system independent players, or 95% of NFL players are system players, which means that they have individual traits that, if used correctly, can shine, but they all have weaknesses as well. So McVay doing a great job with, Les Snead, the general manager, finding the players that they know fit their scheme and can play well. They're doing such a good job of it. Really got to applaud the coaching staff. I'm ready to basically lock McVay back into the top 5 coach conversation. He'd had some tough years because they had a serious turnover. Once they had to pay Goff, they paid Aaron Donald, they traded for Jalen Ramsey. Tough to basically build a roster off of a bunch of nobodies. But those nobodies have now been here for a little longer, and they're getting up to speed, and they're playing really well. As for Washington, tough team to talk about. The Alex Smith return has been well documented. It's amazing. I could go into it, or I could just skip over it. We've heard it all. It's unbelievable that he is back, and it was great to see him out there. I got goosebumps just like the rest of us, but I don't think he's the answer, especially behind this team. I want to see Alex Smith get help around him and make a comeback as an NFL starter, and maybe just seeing him get out there and healthy enough is enough for a team like next year's Bears or whatever to be like, yeah, let's give him a chance to be, like the Panthers have done with Teddy Bridgewater. But for Washington this year, I don't really want to watch Alex Smith go out, get trotted out there with nobody to throw to on a bad scheme and no offensive protection. I don't think that's productive for anyone. I don't think it's productive for Alex Smith to put bad tape out there because he has no chance and to increase the risk of injury. I don't think it's productive for Washington, who either, in my opinion, has a better chance of winning with Kyle Allen, who can at least run around and create and make the most of anything, because he's not a great guy in structure, but he at least has some mobility. And if they're not going to pass protect, you want a guy like that. It's the Case Keenum factor there. Or you put Haskins in there and get him more reps. I just don't think having Alex Smith in there is productive for anyone. Now that we saw him come back, he played football. Let's not let the guy go break his leg again. Seriously. I'm not really buying into Washington right now. I like Ron Rivera, but I don't think he's an elite coach. I think he's a great. This is. I'll make a prediction here. I think Ron Rivera is a good organizational stabilizer. I think it was a great hire. This organization was wheeling from ownership down. They had scandals. Nobody wanted to be there. And I still don't know how many people want to be here, but I think Rivera is a great stabilizer. He's going to come in, command an organization, be a CEO type of guy. He's done everything right publicly, handling the scandals. He's been great for social injustice. He's fighting cancer, and God, I hope he gets through this thing. He's been a stabilizing force for the organization for sure. But do I think they could do better at coach? I do. I really do. I think where this is going to go is Washington's not going anywhere for the next 2, maybe 3 years, and I think that's probably the extent of Rivera's time here in Washington. But I think he can be a great bridge, similar to like what Teddy Bridgewater is doing at quarterback for the Panthers. I think Rivera might be that at coach for Washington. I think long term, they fix this offensive line. They hopefully can get a stable veteran in there. They could be a candidate for an Andy Dalton, or maybe Alex Smith does come back next year with more help. I don't know exactly, but just become like an average team, right? Become, say, what's a good, like the Lions, not even the Lions, better than that. Become That's a great example here. Well, I'm not going to take up all this time thinking of it, but maybe what the Titans were like 2 years ago. Like a 6-7 win team. Titans were winning 9 games. I'm going to get blasted for that from Titans fans now. Great. You guys know what I mean. Be a competent organization, not what they are right now. Get them to that point, and then reach a point where it's like, okay, Rivera, you have a certain ceiling. You're not a big X's and O's guy. You're not really going to elevate our offense. It's an offensive league. We're going to go get a really high-end coach because we now can appeal to a high candidate, maybe 2023's version of Eric Bieniemy, for example. Have a young quarterback prospect in place and try to take that foundation and go up. But I really don't think this is going anywhere with Ron Rivera, unfortunately, other than from the garbage can to a level playing field. All right, Miami, San Francisco. Miami's a good example of a team that's kind of stabilized a mess and become a competent team. That could be a good aiming point for Ron Rivera. Let's start with Miami here. Miami, this is the first time I'm buying into Miami at least a little bit. When I see Tua, I'll make that decision. Excuse me. When I get to see Tua for a month, see what he looks like at the NFL level, that's all this season to me should ever be about, is getting this team at a place where you're comfortable playing Tua, making sure he's ready as far as his hip goes. And I think we're getting much closer to that. Now, you're not going to make that change this week because Fitzpatrick was just so good. You can't make a quarterback change after Fitz has one of the quarterback performances of the week. He was outstanding, but we know what Fitz is. In this week or next week or 3 weeks from now, he's going to come out and throw 3 picks and lay a stinker. It's what he is. I don't even think Dolphins fans would argue with that. I will say the reason I'm buying in a little bit is the offensive line's starting to click, and that was the big thing. Is they're getting a bunch of young offensive linemen. How can they look together? And then they're getting these playmakers. Gesicki and Preston Williams are stepping up. You get a running back in Myles Gaskin who looks good. This is, I will say, am I ready to say this? Yeah, I think I'm ready to say this. I think they are a competent surrounding core for Tua. Now, you've given them time to get up to speed to the NFL level. You've given them time for that hip to recover fully. As long as that is not a medical risk, I would wait until Fitzpatrick lays one of these stinkers. It's going to come, and make the change the next week. We're ready. I think we are ready to evaluate Tua. Not that they would move on from him this year, but it changes your thinking. If you see him for the last 6-7 weeks of the season, and he is great, that changes your thinking for the offseason. That changes your draft strategy as far as, do we need to get him a receiver? Do we need to get him a left tackle? What does our offense look like with Tua? What are our weaknesses? What can we build on? But also, if you feel real good about him, he's on that rookie contract. That's when you say, maybe we should take this first-round pick and go get Julio Jones or, do an aggressive move. Teams like that's the Chiefs, the Browns, the Seahawks did it with Russ. When you got that quarterback on a rookie contract, you go all in when you have the quarterback. Now, the Bears tried it prematurely. The Bears tried it when they thought Mitch Trubisky was the guy. He never truly showed that. They strictly did it because Trubisky was on the rookie contract. Backfired a little bit because at the end of the day, you still need that quarterback. But if you feel confident that you've got the guy, go all in. Miami should find out this year if they've got the guy. They spent the 5th overall pick on the guy. And I'll say, if he's great, this could be a historic quarterback class because I still have great expectations for Jordan Love. Herbert looks much better than I expected. Burrow looks like he's going to be the real deal. And if Tua is good, and I think they're actually doing a good job here to surround him with a unit here, then this could be a historic quarterback class. I really do believe that. But let's talk about San Francisco. So this was an all-time low for Jimmy Garoppolo. Now, he's dealing with an ankle injury. It could be that he's not able to generate that power. He's not a guy with a natural high-end arm talent. So if he's not able to generate power from his lower body, that could really be hurting his game. I'm not like out on Jimmy Garoppolo, but this was a concern. I mean, an ankle injury to me is not the end of the world. That shouldn't be the reason you're throwing a game away, right? And I've liked Jimmy over the years, but I've slowly, been dropping off of him. This is an all-time low for Jimmy Garoppolo, and he is officially on the hot seat. Presumably San Francisco could go have Matt Ryan tomorrow if they wanted to. Kyle Shanahan's not going to sit around and wait forever. The contract there for Jimmy G is very much expendable. He has a lot to prove, and that is actually, I saw a tweet that someone said, can we please flex the Niners-Rams game out of Sunday Night Football to watch the Browns-Steelers game? And I agree, the Browns-Steelers game is going to be great, but I think this Sunday Night Football game is super interesting. Two teams with a lot to prove. The Rams want to get into the Super Bowl conversation. We've all acknowledged that they're kind of back. They look great. I don't think anyone's really picking them to win the Super Bowl right now. If they come out and blow the Niners out, I know the Niners just got blown up by the Dolphins, but trust me, the Niners are going to show up for this game. And hell, it might be a reason why they slept on the Dolphins. They might have been looking ahead to this game against the Rams. Two of the same schemes. These defenses will be familiar. These coaches are very familiar. This is going to be a bloodbath of the game. I really am excited for this Sunday Night Football game. I don't think this results in a blowout. Good teams, and I do believe that the Niners are at least a good culture. They're dealing with a lot of injury stuff. Good teams respond to adversity, and I think San Francisco is going to bunker down this week and come to the table with a chip on their shoulder. I mean, it's comparable to what the Titans did to the Bills. Like, you give an NFL team a chip on their shoulder and a united goal and something to work towards, and it's a good culture, they're going to get there. They're going to accomplish their goal. And I think San Francisco might be a great candidate for a bet of the week, to spoil my picks a little bit. But this is a shit or get off the pot week. Pardon my French. I know we're on YouTube here, but this is a huge week for Jimmy Garoppolo, and he knows it. He knows. He's like, crap, Matt Ryan's on the block. I know Shanahan likes him. My contract's expendable. If I wanna stick around in this league, I probably need this scheme because it's really QB friendly. I need to show up against the Rams. So I'm excited for the Sunday Night Football game this week. Rams, Niners. The Rams as a team need it. The Niners as a team need it for the division race, for the playoff race. I'm excited for that game. It's going to be a really good football game. All right, we've got Colts, Browns. My Phillip Rivers stock, I would like to sell it if anyone wants to buy it. I don't think that's possible. I'm just kind of tired of the costly interceptions in the fourth quarter, the lack of arm talent, the lack of mobility. It's just, it doesn't really win in the NFL right now. Offenses are too explosive. It's just hard to keep pace like that, and you can tell he's pressing to try to keep pace. The Colts are a good football team. I just can't get all that excited about this. I don't think anything's going to change here with Phillip Rivers. I think you're always going to be nervous with Phillip Rivers. Third, fourth quarter, you're always going to be nervous that back-breaking interception is coming. It's been the case with Rivers for years. I don't think it's going to be any different here for the Colts. They're basically the Chargers, Midwest now, or Mideast, or whatever Indiana is. The Colts will be fine. I still think they're in the competition for a playoff team. They'll win 9-10 games. The Browns, however, we talked about this being a blank or get off the pot week for Jimmy Garoppolo. A little bit different, and it's going to be, again, pardon my French. If you're 18, if you're under 18, and new age. If you're a kid, please hit that mute button. But this is a phrase I learned in Ireland. It's cock on block week for the Browns. They're sitting at the big boy table. Cleveland, we're all happy for you. We've all been waiting. You're here. You're good. You're great. You got a good coach. Welcome to the big boy table. You are a playoff contender. No one's denying that. But do you want to be that? Do you want to be a playoff contender, or do you want to be the Raiders, the Bills, the Titans, do you want to be a Super Bowl contender? Or do you want to be a, solid, good football team? And the phrase I learned in Ireland is cock on block week. Pittsburgh Steelers, Sunday, they're undefeated, right? Yeah, Steelers are undefeated. Division game, bloodbath, cock on block week. You're sitting at the big boy table, put it on the table. Go beat the Steelers. Or at least come very close to beating the Steelers. Because that's what the big boys do, Cleveland. I'm not saying you can't do it. I'm just really excited to see it. They've had some big wins. This offense looks great. They have a great scheme. It's proven. It works. The defense has Myles Garrett and not much else. But this is going to be a great game. I'm excited to see it. Probably taking the Steelers in that one. I got to put more thought into it. Probably would bet on the organization of the Steelers over the organization of the Browns right now. But they got a chance. They got a real chance to, put their cock on the block and announce that they are a legit member of the big boys table. And not just like, you got the big boys table, you got the kids table with your Colts and your Raiders and your Cowboys and your, cool. Like, yeah, you can come into the kitchen or into the dining room. You can come in, you can sit in the same room, but you're not at our table. You're not with us. You're not the Steelers. You're not the Packers. You're not the Chiefs. You're not the Ravens. You're not the Seahawks. But, you can go sit over at that table. But if you want to come over here, you got to beat us. You got to beat the Steelers. So I'm excited to see what the Browns' answer is for that. Minnesota at Seattle. This game was actually a crazy game, but actually somewhat predictable. I had the Vikings as a pick this week to cover, but I did pick Seattle to win because I basically said, I'm taking Russell over Kirk Cousins to win the game, but I did think the 7 points was too much. And that is because the Seattle Seahawks are incapable of playing in a normal football game. And not just a normal football game, they're incapable of blowing out another team. And it's not even that they play down to their competition. It's not even that they, play up to their competition. I think there is a reason for this for the Seattle Seahawks, that they are always in these crazy game-ending scenarios. And it's their style and their roster construction. So to begin with, their line play is bad. Their offensive line's playing much better this year. I don't think that's getting recognized enough, but specifically on the defensive side of the ball. But even on the offensive line, they're not a dominant offensive line. You can very much get to Russell Wilson. They're not like a bottom 10 offensive line. They're certainly not top 10. But their line play on both sides of the ball is very, very average to below average. And it's really tough to blow teams out when your line play is like that. Because teams can dictate things to you when that happens. And when you go against a team like Minnesota or Miami, like we saw, all of a sudden teams that are used to really struggling in pass protection and really struggling to get after the passer, all of a sudden those things become much easier. And oftentimes those teams have strengths elsewhere that become boosted by the fact that the line play has been, the playing field's been evened there. So while Seattle has Russell Wilson and these great playmakers, they're allowing other teams to elevate to that. And then offensively, their style also contributes to this. So it's not just the line play thing. The Seahawks' offensive style is run the ball and take play action shots, or just deep shots in general. And it's just a little bit inconsistent on a drive-to-drive basis, I guess what I'm saying. A lot of these blowouts, you'll see a team come out and 4 drives in a row. Like Green Bay over Atlanta is a great example. Teams are comparing Green Bay and Seattle right now. Green Bay comes out and they 4 drives in a row, come out, methodical, long drives too. That's the other thing. Long drives, lengthy drives, 13-play drives, where you're wearing out other teams and you're just consistent and steady, marching down the field against bad teams. That's not Seattle's offense, and that's by choice. I think it's a good choice. I think that's the biggest reason that they're so successful, is because they really do this at a high level, and it's a big reason that they're able to do it whether you're playing the Dolphins or the Vikings or a top defense, which, by the way, they haven't really gone against this year. They've played Atlanta, Dallas, Miami, and Minnesota, some of the worst defenses in the league. Just want to point that out. But, they're going to come out, and if they're going to score a touchdown, more often than not, it's 4 plays, 5 plays, chunk plays, and then the defense is back on the field. It's not like these other teams where you are methodically dismantling other teams. That's not really how they do it. So I think their style of play leads to these crazy games. That offensive style alone, just on a 4-play basis, they're going to get in a lot of 3rd and 10s because if they don't, a lot of times they run and don't go anywhere. But then they're going to get in these 3rd and 10s because most of their passes are downfield. Their offense is like none other in the league, and it works. I picked Seattle to win the NFC this year. Don't get me wrong. I'm just pointing out kind of something different about the Seahawks. I don't even necessarily think it's a flaw, but it is. They are kind of playing with fire a little bit, and more often than not, Russ is going to capitalize on that and make you look great. All right, Chargers, Saints. Fun game to watch. Herbert was great in the first half and then kind of fell off in the second half. And he's making incredible plays. I'm just going to continue to evaluate him. Right now, I've admitted he's impressed me. His ceiling to me is higher than I expected. I thought, best case he's going to be like Jared Goff, which is really good quarterback. I think that was a fair best case comp for him coming out of college. But some of the added plays that he's making, some of the out of structure stuff he's doing, he's just a great athlete. He's mobile and can escape pressure, and I think that's potentially something I underestimated with him. I knew he was a good athlete, but I saw it more in designed runs than on play extension as a passer, and he's doing that at a really high level. So he reminds me right now a lot of Carson Wentz. He'll make some ridiculous throws, just amazing throws. He's got a top 3 arm in the NFL right now. Like, he just commands the football so well. I honestly, I don't know if it was the throw that impressed me the most, but how impressive was the throw to the back corner of the end zone to Mike Williams for the touchdown, where he's throwing across field, and he had to throw it through not necessarily a tight window, like Williams was coming open, but he had to get it over the linebacker, across the field, and past the ear of the D-back, and he just ripped it on the mark, and that was really impressive to see. And that was, not an easy throwing window to see. So he's seeing the field pretty well. He's playing in structure relatively well. Not great. Like, I still think he needs to continue to develop, just as any rookie, as I've said, not named Joe Burrow, needs to do. But yeah, Herbert continues to impress. But again, to be fair, yes, he's impressed, but in the second half of games, he's not been particularly good. There was certainly plays he left on the table. The 4th down throw in overtime, you're getting nitpicky here, but if you want to start putting Herbert up as this future elite quarterback, he made the wrong decision on that. He threw it short of the sticks on 4th down. It was a 0 blitz, and he had the corner wide open, and he missed it, and he didn't throw it there. The play before that, he underthrew KJ Hill over the middle of the field. He's been far from perfect. That is to be sure. He had another throw in the 4th quarter that very well could have been picked off by Malcolm Jenkins. But getting nitpicky, which you can do when you want to start, pushing a guy up in the quarterback conversation. He's good. He's a good quarterback, and he looks like he's going to be good. But I think he's showing that he really has a chance to be a Carson Wentz, Matthew Stafford type of guy. I still have my doubts that the mental aspect will ever get to the level where he takes these physical traits and becomes Patrick Mahomes and Rodgers and like a truly elite, week-to-week elite quarterback. But I think there's a good likelihood that he can become Matthew Stafford, which is a really physically talented top 10 quarterback that, he'll have some really great games and he'll have some really great moments. But every few weeks, you're just kind of underwhelmed. You kind of have some bad decision making. I really like the Stafford comp for Wentz for Herbert right now. But Wentz is the way Wentz is playing this year is another good comp. And then the Saints just continue to kind of stay alive here. Somehow they're scoring like 30 points every week. It doesn't feel like it. Drew Brees has not been good. He'll make some throws. When he can really step into a throw and really see it developing and really put his full body into it, like the touchdown he threw to Jared Cook, for example, he can still get the ball downfield, and he's accurate enough. Like it's not like he's a bad starter. He just isn't an elite starter. So they really need to, again, have this sort of death by 1,000 cuts offense. Getting Michael Thomas back will be nice because you can't just focus on Alvin Kamara, and Emmanuel Sanders is playing better. They really have surrounded him with playmakers that play well with his skill set. And obviously getting Michael Thomas back will help. So I don't have a lot of huge concerns about the Saints, other than the defense just continues to struggle. Lattimore has not been good. The pass rush has not been good. DeMario Davis has not been as good this year. They're just an average to below average defense this year, which is a problem when you don't have an explosive offense. They have to basically play perfect on offense with the way their defense is playing right now. They have to be perfect on offense. And Drew Brees is capable of it, but even then when they play perfect, it might not be enough because they don't have enough of the big plays. But I think they're probably getting too much crap right now. I think they're still a really good football team. I'm not really seeing them in like top 10 power rankings and stuff. I still think they're a top 10 team. Then the Bills-Titans game is the last one here. So we talked about the Browns' elevation to the big boy table, or at least the big boy room. The Bills did not handle their elevation to the big boy table very well. They kind of, you know what they did. They kind of pooped in their big boy pants, if you will. I think I just stole that from the fantasy footballers. But anyway, not a good week for the Bills. I'm not going to dog on Josh Allen, and people expect me for some reason to like hate on Josh Allen, forgetting that I like Josh Allen. This was much more about the Bills' defense. They were out Tre'Davious White. The linebackers are banged up there, and it shows. But the Bills are kind of in this weird range with, I would say, on the defensive side of the ball, because I think the offense is a good offense. Like I don't have any worries about the Bills' offense. Josh Allen did make a bad mistake in this game. It's a reason I've been hesitant about ranking them too high, because traditionally guys that make bad mistakes can get better at that, which Josh Allen clearly has. He's been more accurate this year, which is awesome. But I'm always going to be worried about Josh Allen throwing that big interception late in the game. He's had some moments this year where he's made some questionable decisions, and he's continuing to develop. I don't want to really bang on Josh Allen. I think the concern for the Bills is the defense. I think they'll have better weeks ahead. I didn't move them in my power rankings. I've still got them 6th. But, if you want to be put in the Super Bowl tier, because I didn't, I had them 6th as the next team below the Steelers outside of the Super Bowl tier. You want to climb up into the Super Bowl tier, you should probably beat Ryan Tannehill and the Titans. The Titans are a good football team, don't get me wrong, but they got kind of embarrassed. Like, they got blown out in this game. Tennessee, I'll just end the Bills there by saying that they'll be all right. I trust the offense. I think Josh Allen will continue to play really well. He wasn't all bad in this game. He was mostly good. The interception was rough, but I think that's part of who he's going to be. Like a much better version of Jameis Winston, basically, who makes a few less mistakes. Maybe Matthew Stafford would be a decent comp for how Allen's playing. But Allen's he's unlike most quarterbacks we've ever seen. But anyway, I think they'll be all right. The offense is really good. I don't have any questions about the Bills' offense. Defensively, they'll get some of these stars back. It'll help. But they're in this weird spot where they don't have a lot of stars, other than Tre'Davious White, and they just have a hard time dominating. And to be fair, most teams' defenses have struggled this year. It's just not a very big defensive year, which I think is really why we're seeing teams like Seattle, Green Bay, and Kansas City really shine, because that quarterback play is also more important when you have open communication with no crowd noise, and the defense can't get after it with the pass rush, key off on cadence and stuff, or silent counts rather. But yeah, the Bills are, I'm not too worried about them. Now, the Titans did impress, and I gained a lot of respect for the Titans. They are a badass organization. They have been going back to last year, and I like teams like that. I really do. Now, Do I trust Ryan Tannehill going against Patrick Mahomes? No, I don't. Frankly, I don't really trust them if they were to go against the Ravens again. They do match up well, though, because they play so physical, as the Ravens do. Titans are a really good football team. I had them 9th in the power rankings this week. It's the highest I've had them. I'm buying in. I just think there's a limit to the physical approach. I think the Titans still lack an aspect of finesse. I think that's fair. And, their defense is really well-rounded now. I think I'm higher on this defense now than I've ever been. It's too bad that they don't have that crowd noise because it's just going to be a tough year for defense to take over. But they have a really good balance on this team. They are going to keep the score down. They don't have an elite defense. Like, I like the pass rush, and maybe once they get Simmons back in there, they can get to that level. Because I do think Simmons, Clowney, and Vic Beasley, not Vic Beasley, I mean, he is there, but Harold Landry. And then Vic Beasley can be a fourth piece that just kind of does some random stuff. But I think that could emerge as a top pass rush. You have really good blitzers in Brown and Evans too. Secondary is really solid. Linebackers are solid. It's just a really good defense. And then offensively, there's going to be some moments. There's going to be some moments where, Tannehill's not doing crazy stuff, where he's, Tannehill's a tough breakdown because he's accurate. He's pretty decisive. I think Tannehill and Dak Prescott are pretty comparable players. Like, they're really good quarterbacks, and they're accurate downfield. They're decisive. They can run. But on third down, they might not feel that blitz. They might not always step up. They might throw it short of the sticks. Like, there's a little bit missing there. But Tannehill continues to be impressive. And they're gonna score, especially when they get Corey Davis back. The offensive line is healthy. Derrick Henry's playing well. Jonnu Smith continues to emerge as a top tight end. It's a good football team. They take these deep shots to Khalif Raymond. So maybe I am too low on the Titans. Maybe they really are a really legitimate. I just can't picture it. I'm not ready to go there yet. There's nothing wrong with the team. I'm trying to talk myself into it, but I'm just okay, playoffs come. Titans are 12-4, but they got to go to Kansas City. I still think Kansas City is an 8 or 9 point favorite, or they got to host Baltimore. I think they could beat Baltimore, but if you got to get past both those teams, or the Steelers even, I think they match up well with the Steelers, but I think they're a really good playoff team, but I don't think they're a Super Bowl contender. I think that might be where I stop on them. Maybe they go 15-1 and change my expectations. Maybe they keep scoring 30 points a week and this defense becomes elite, and I got to change my stance on them. But right now, I'm not quite ready on the Titans, but this was a big win, and I really respect, to get back to the point about them being a badass organization, I do not approve of them holding a private practice when half the team has COVID. They should be punished for that. Loss of draft picks, whatever. I think that should absolutely happen. But anytime a team overcomes adversity and does it by doing the right things to respond, they had the practice thing. That's crappy. But they, stopped doing those things. They got healthy. They stopped clearly clubbing or whatever. Okay, I'm not going to make assumptions, but I know they had some problems with guys in the summer of going out in Nashville, which is a great party town, and coming back with COVID. I know that there was some cases of that. So I'm not going to make too many implications about what happened and how COVID got in there in the first place. But they got healthy. They came out. They said, screw everyone that's, poking fun at us. And they came out and beat a Bills team that I'm sure when they did the pregame picks, I'm sure there was some tweets about, nobody picked us or whatever. I did. I had Titans money line. All right, let's get into the mailbag here before we get out of here. So again, guys, this is the Patreon mailbag. And if you want to guarantee that I see your question, this screen's not working. I'm going to pull it over here. You can guarantee that I read your question on the show by signing up on patreon.com/ThatFranchiseGuy. Okay, so question from my boy Vic. Fantasy football question. Darrell Henderson or Jerick McKinnon this week? Rams and Niners play each other. I would go with Darrell Henderson. Final answer. Justin Oaks. What's up, Justin? Justin always comes in with a good question. Since the trade deadline is coming up, I was wondering how different teams approach it because trades are fairly uncommon in the NFL. What types of teams typically look to move on before the deadline, and how much do they factor in ease of the new player adjusting to a scheme? Also, why are trades in the NFL less common than other leagues like the NBA? Well, you kind of answered that question for yourself, I think. Scheme adjustment is a much bigger deal in the NFL. Now, if you can acquire a guy that is familiar with your scheme, that has maybe played with someone in the same coaching staff, or you've coached in the past, that obviously is going to ease things in. Verbiage is a big deal, getting you up to date on the playbook and the audible set and the protections and all the different things. Or if you're on the defensive side of the ball, there's different communication keys. All that stuff certainly comes into play. Then you have the matter of fact of is the player in that 95% where they're just a system player? And, in that case, you might say, he knows their system, he's a scheme fit, he's a need. Whereas if you're in that 5%, like we saw with, say, Amari Cooper or with Jalen Ramsey, those are 5%ers, right? Those are elite players that are going to play at a high level no matter what scheme you put them in. Then it's let's just get the guy. We'll plug him in. He'll get up to speed. Those conversations definitely come into play. And then it's just buying or selling. Most teams are looking to buy at the deadline, especially with 7 teams making the playoffs now on each conference. But I would say trades are becoming more and more common just because I think it's being proven out as a more reasonable team-building method, and you're seeing guys even change schemes and dominate right away. Like Amari Cooper was great. Second he stepped in from a different scheme. But yeah, it is definitely different. It's not like baseball and basketball where they don't have to learn anything, really. I mean, there's plays in basketball, but you can trade for a shooting guard and tell him to stand here and shoot a 3. Or you can trade for a baseball player and definitely nothing changes. There's no schemes in baseball. It's just mano v mano. So transition's much easier. Also, there's bigger salary cap ramifications too, oftentimes in the NFL. All right, from Jeremy. What's up, Jeremy? Do you think betting on the Cowboys to win the NFC East is a good idea? Let me pull up the odds real quick. NFC East playoff odds. Bear with me here. I don't like this. Here we go. Odds Shark. Odds Shark has it at -105. Well, we went through the schedule last show, and the Eagles' schedule is really tough, and they lost to the Steelers. I do kind of like that bet. -105 is not bad at all. I think people don't realize that the difference between Andy Dalton and Dak, it's there. There's a difference for sure. But I don't think it's massive. I think the Cowboys' offense takes a slight dip. But there's other contributing factors to why this defense can be better. I think they'll run the ball more in Dallas, which could lead to less 3-and-outs. There were a lot of turnovers from Dak. I don't know if Dalton will do that or not. And they'll know. The defense will know, we got to do our job much more. Sometimes you see these mentality shifts in organizations when a player goes down like that. All right, from Matthew Bell. Got a couple questions here. You have Jonnu Smith and Robert Tonyan as your tight ends. You're looking to trade one. Who should you keep? I would keep Jonnu Smith. Jonnu Smith, to me, is a rock star. I like Robert Tonyan, but Jonnu Smith, to me, is a critical piece of the Titans' offense. Whereas I don't know if I'm ready to say that about Robbie Tonyan yet. And then another question. From Matthew Bell,
Why is Derek Brown struggling so much? He's been invisible on the field. I knew there were questions about his ability to get after the QB, but he's not even stopping the run either. Should I be concerned he is a bust? He's had a couple good games. He's had 2 good games and 3 bad games. He's been very bipolar. I wouldn't worry too much about him. We'll continue to collect more information, but I wouldn't be too worried. I mean, to be honest, Derek Brown's been better than Ed Oliver was as a rookie or as Quinnen Williams was as a rookie. I wouldn't worry too much. I still like Derek Brown. I don't think he'll ever be a superstar. And when you're not a superstar, you're going to have some games like that. All right, from Brandon Crosby. I appreciate you, by the way, Brandon, saying, and some of you guys as well, when you send in these questions, please do say mailbag question. Lead with that, because sometimes you send me other questions that aren't mailbag questions, and it gets lost, and I forget to respond to you. So if you're sending in these questions on Patreon, again, please do start with mailbag question. All right. What on earth happened to the 49ers this week? I wasn't able to watch that game, so I'm wondering what you saw. Also, I did see Jimmy G was benched. What do you think should happen with him in that situation? I kind of talked about the Niners, but as far as what happened, Jimmy G was just bad. He made bad decisions. He missed throws, all of it. Like, it was just an all-around picture what a bad quarterback performance looks like. Missing throws, making bad reads, turnover-worthy plays, not making good plays. That's what Jimmy G did. Just in a perpetual deficit in this game. They just didn't stand a chance with how the quarterback play was. Now, there's 2 other big things going on with San Francisco. The offensive line has not been good at all. They're getting a ton of pressure. And the defense is missing Nick Bosa. I mean, they were not a great defense, if you remember, without Nick Bosa. You put in Nick Bosa, and they were a great defense. They don't like to blitz a ton. I mean, they'll mix in their blitzes, but at the heart of this defense, they are a Seattle 3 defense, which means dropping 7 guys into a zone and rushing 4. At the heart, that's what they are, and that's what made this defense elite. Without Nick Bosa, they can't really do that. They just aren't getting that pressure, even if they are only sending 4. So line play has been a huge issue for the Niners. That's been a strength for them going back through last season. All right. From Jacob Anthony. Not really a question, but I'll read it. A fun fact about Robert Tonyan, he's very good friends with George Kittle, and this past offseason, he moved into the Kittle house in Nashville and trained with him. Something I think about every time you compare them together. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure Kittle's got to be a role model for Tonyan, which that's a damn good role model to have, and it's a very similar scheme, so makes sense. Makes sense why it's showing up. All right, from Lions, why haven't the Lions fired Quinn and Patricia yet? And when they do you think they could convince Bieniemy to come to Detroit, if not for some guys that could be next head coach? Who are some guys that could be next head coach aside from Darrell Bevell? Look, I'm gonna get a little takey here. I am going to say, do I go this route? I'm going to go this route because I do kind of believe it. You know, there's a lot of conversation about black head coaches. And if there is a team that you could be pretty critical about being biased against black coaches, it would be the Detroit Lions. I don't think Jim Caldwell should have been fired. He was doing a good job. He's doing a better job of any coach has done there for a decade. And I don't think that Detroit would be the team that is interested in Bieniemy. I mean, maybe that's way off the mark. But if you want my honest opinion, I would wager that might be what's going on in Detroit. I won't go any further into it than that, but I find it unlikely that Bieniemy is the answer. I also don't think Joe Brady would rush to go to Detroit. Detroit, to me, it's just they're in a tough spot. When you are such a crappy run organization and you fail to win and you go coach by coach by coach, player by player by player, maybe you're looking at a new quarterback, it's just really hard to appeal to the top candidates. And that's how you end up with Matt Patricia. or to begin with, Jim Caldwell was never to be fair, Jim Caldwell was never a high floor coach, but he did a really good job for Detroit, and he kind of stabilized some things there. But I don't know, man. Detroit, I really struggle with. I struggle with coming up with opinions on Detroit. I struggle with coming up with answers. They are just stuck in purgatory, and I don't see them getting the head coaching candidates that Detroit fans are going to want. I don't see them getting Joe Brady. I don't see them getting Eric Bieniemy, and maybe the Bills coach. Well, you said Darrell Bevell. Isn't it Brian Daboll is the Bills offensive coordinator? That could be an option. Is the Bills offensive coordinator? I think it's Brian Daboll. You're saying Darrell Bevell, Darrell Bevell. I know the name. I'm drawing a blank on where he's coaching. Darrell Bevell, football coach. Oh, you're talking about promoting him. Because he's the offensive coordinator in Detroit. No, I don't think so. I mean, Bevell's fine. They have a lot of talent on that offense. I don't think Bevell is a head coaching candidate. Sorry if that's grim for the Lions. It's just exhausting trying to figure out what to do with that team, because I just don't see them going anywhere. This is okay. Here we go. Which head coaching job do I want if I'm Bieniemy? That's a great question of looking at it the other way instead of every team obviously wants Eric Bieniemy. I really like the Kansas City spot because you have speed on offense, which he's used to. He's got Hardman and Hill. You got speed on offense and a mobile quarterback. You can implement your scheme in Houston. And similar offensive line. Like the personnel in Houston is very similar to Kansas City. And I think that would be where I would want to go. I know you don't have a first-round pick, but you have the quarterback to build around. You have speed on offense. So that to me is the route I would go if I was Bieniemy. From Tyler P. Quick question. Where do you see the Eagles in 5 years? I think the Eagles will be in a much better standing in 5 years than they are right now. Howie Roseman has had some misses come draft day, especially at the receiver position. I believe in Carson Wentz long term. I still do. I think that they do a great job of building through their line play. I think that they are in a transition right now. They have a lot of veteran players. They are trying to squeeze out this window. It's been ugly. I will say I wouldn't be stunned if they have a new coach in 5 years. If they kind of went the Mike McCarthy, Matt LaFleur route where they're like, you know what, it's just not working. You've had some success. You won a Super Bowl 5 years ago. We're going to bring in a new guy. I think that'd be good. I don't love the coaching in Philadelphia, but I think they'll be in a much better spot in 5 years than they are right now. I think Wentz will have reestablished himself as a top 10 quarterback. I do believe in that. And I do believe in Howie Roseman and that front office. They've had their misses, but they've also done a lot of really smart snuff. Smart snuff. We'll finish that question with that comment. Okay, from Tyler. I was going back and watching a lot of my draft content from this cycle. Couldn't help but notice that a lot of times I compared 2020 prospects to 2019 and 2018 draft players. I find that strange since it's only been 2 years and they're being used as the draft comps after being the subject of draft scrutiny themselves not long ago. Fair point. So my question is, when is it too early to make a player the basis of a pro player comparison? I believe that for the most part, there are outliers. There's your DJ Charks. There's your there's your there's players that take 3 or 4 years to develop. Now, I do believe that for the most part, after about a year or two, players are who they are, or you can at least tell what their trajectory is going to be. If I compare a guy to, say, that there's things about him that remind me of, say, I'm drawing a blank on his name of where I was going with this, the receiver in Washington, Terry McLaurin. So I say a receiver in this class reminds me of Terry McLaurin, where he was a little underutilized in college, but he had a good release, good deep threat. I'm not so afraid of the production, and I'm willing to project this because it reminds me of Terry McLaurin. I think that's fair. Like, Terry McLaurin came in to a crappy organization and kicked ass from the get-go. Like, Terry McLaurin's going to be a good football player. Now, if you're comparing him to a bust, I think that's a valid point. Like, I don't think you should be comparing him to a guy that busts right away. And I think that's part of why the guys I didn't like, I would have to go back and cross-reference this, but let's think about the guys I didn't like. I didn't love Mekhi Becton. Looks like I might be wrong about that. I think I comped him to Trent Brown. I should pull up my draft board for this question because I might as well do some on-the-fly research. All right. So let's just go, like, some of the guys I didn't like. Becton's a bad example because I don't do O-line comps. But let's go to the receiver group. So a receiver I didn't love was Denzel Mims. Or I was at least lower on Denzel Mims. I compared him to Devontae Parker, who has been in the league for a while. I definitely will make references to players that come out recently, but I think I do a good job of, so let's just go down the list of my receiver comps. So Jerry Jeudy, Amari Cooper, established star. CeeDee Lamb, Stephon Diggs, established star. Henry Ruggs, Deshaun Jackson, established star. Justin Jefferson, Robert Woods. T. Higgins, Mike Williams. Devin Duvernay, Jarvis Landry. KJ Hamler, T.Y. Hilton. Van Jefferson, Keenan Allen. Laviska Shenault, Deebo Samuel. That was an example of we saw success. I saw similar cases. Yes, I'm comparing him to a young player, but we saw the traits that Deebo had in college coming out. I think Laviska Shenault showed similar traits in that he's not a great route runner, but he's got good hands. He's great after the catch. You scheme him up, you get him open. He could be Deebo Samuel right away. Just to go down the list, Alan Lazard, Adam Thielen, Julian Edelman, Nelson Aguilar, Darius Slayton. Again, not using a rookie bust, using a rookie breakout. Braxton Miller for Lynn Bowden. Then we have David Moore for Quintez Cephas, Marquise Goodwin, Sammy Coates, DeAnthony Thomas are some of the other comps I use. So when I use an actual player comp, I don't think I use first, second round players too often. Because you're right, you do need to see those guys play out if you're going to do an actual player comp. Now, if you want to talk about traits, I think it's fair. I think it's fair to say in the case of, let's go to a different position. Let's go to linebacker. So let's go to, say, trying to find a young comp here. Okay, here we go. I compared Davion Taylor. Now, most of the other comps at linebacker were Jalen Smith, Leighton Vander Esch, Corey Littleton, Raekwon McMillan, Matt Milano, Hassan Reddick, veteran players. But I do have a comp here of Davion Taylor to Oren Burks, who is more or less a bust for Green Bay. He's in year 3. Would have been year 2 as of this evaluation. So I do say that Davion Taylor kind of unpolished like Oren Burks coming out, has the athletic traits like Oren Burks, but I'd worry that if he doesn't get the right coaching, or just I'd worry that maybe he isn't going to show that development, that I worry a little bit that he might not be a very good player, that he might just be Oren Burks, who's a really good athlete who doesn't have the football IQ or something else. So I do it occasionally, but I think I'm pretty fair about that, but it's a decent point. I agree. I don't think you should be saying this guy's, if I came out and said that this guy's going to be DJ Chark and be a bust, that probably would have been premature. And maybe I did do that because I did think DJ Chark was going to be a bust, and he's a very rare scenario of a guy that totally turned it around. All right, we got some more mailbag questions. We got 3 more here. From JOR. It's obviously a rare situation, but do you ever see a team trading for a coach in the near future? Last time we saw this was Belichick and Gruden. Big hauls to get them. Ultimately worth it for the teams getting the coaches. Again, it would be rare because an already established coach would have to become disgruntled with the front office and ownership of the team. At the same time, the trading team may not feel comfortable giving up assets to get the coach. To you, is this something from the past, or could it happen again? Whew. There was conversations about it with like Sean Payton going to Dallas. I could see it making sense. It's very rare. I could see there being a circumstance. Like maybe a team learns from the Dan Quinn scenario. Maybe a team like Atlanta learns from that scenario and says, we like Dan Quinn. He's probably one of the 32 best coaches in the league, or at least at the time he would have been viewed that way. But we ain't trying to lose Kyle Shanahan. The best way to appease this is Dan Quinn. We, instead of firing him, let him go, go be the Lions head coach. Go on. Goodbye. See ya. All right, Kyle, you're the head coach. That might be a scenario where I imagine it making the most sense. As far as a coach being disgruntled, that'd be pretty rare because you'd have to be established enough to have a market where another team would then go and trade for you. But you'd also have to be in a situation where things aren't going well and you're unhappy. And if things aren't going well, you're probably not perceived as a great coach. So that'd be pretty rare. I mean, it would have to be a pretty rare deal where like maybe Robert Kraft and Bill Belichick really butt heads. And it's just like, you know what? Time for you to go somewhere else. Or maybe Bill Belichick just trades himself because he's bored. I don't know, because he could probably have the power to do that. But yeah, that's a great question. I mean, it could still happen. It just seems pretty unlikely. From Andrew Bridges, kind of a long mailbag question for you. That's all right. How much of an impact is the absence of Jerry Gray having on Minnesota's DBs? And how much of Jair Alexander's growth this season can you attribute to Green Bay bringing Jerry Gray in? Also, how much do positional coaches actually impact the play of their unit across the league? I think position coaches are a huge deal. When you talk about coach and culture, that transcends all the way through the position coaches. It's a real thing. Like you got to coach up players. We talked about it. 95% of players have a very specific skill set and aren't great in other spots. You got to coach up those other weaknesses. It's a big deal. There's a lot of, I think, underqualified or just proportionally poor position coaches in the league. When it comes to Jerry Gray, I can't say that I'm particularly familiar with him himself. I don't have a ton of time to investigate into individual position coaches. I think Zimmer has a good eye for it. If he let him go, I trust Zimmer's opinion on that front. Zimmer does some other things that are suspect, but when it comes to staffing his defensive coaches, I think he has a pretty good feel for that. And I'm not overwhelmed with the growth of everyone else in Green Bay. I don't think he's really getting the most out of like Darnell Savage, Kevin King. Fine. Jerry Alexander, I think, is just a different animal. I mean, he has obviously the athletic traits. I mean, he is a top elite athlete at the corner position. Some of the best burst and speed, all of it. But he's a student of the game too. He wants it. He has that drive. He is competitive. He's feisty. He is an ideal corner. I can't say enough about Jair Alexander. I mean, the sack he had on Kirk Cousins for that safety in week 1, that was an instinctive play for him. That was cover 2. He was supposed to stay in the flat. And he bit on the play action a little bit, assuming the Vikings were going to run the ball on the 1 yard line. But when he saw it was a pass, instead of dropping back into his zone, knowing that there's probably not going to be anyone there to cover, or at least seeing that he's so close to Kirk Cousins, he just said, screw it, I'm going to go sack Kirk Cousins right now. That was not a blitz. It looked like a blitz, but that was Jair trying to make a play against the run and just making a play instinctively. Like, he has everything you want from a corner position. He's good in zone. He's good in man. I would want to go and look and see how he is with his press, because he's a little bit smaller. How he is with his feet in press coverage. That's one thing I haven't quite closely paid attention to. Might be the one criticism of him. But yeah, I think Jair is just different. I don't have strong opinions on Jerry Gray, one way or the other. All right, last question from Connor Lee. How do the Texans fix their franchise going forward? They have no picks, very low cap. Do they find a way to get rid of J.J. Watt, who is declining in a big cap hit? Yeah, I think they wait a couple weeks because, like I talked about, they're not completely done. If they can figure out an offensive scheme that works there, I don't think they're completely done. I think they could turn the season around, maybe even sneak into the playoffs. But if they lose a couple more games, or even just one, like if they get to 1-5, I think they very well could think about trading J.J. Watt before the deadline, which is in 3 weeks. But I think they're thinking about it. I think that's a great start to get back some picks. You could probably get a second. I don't think you get a first. You probably get a late second from a contending team like Seattle or Green Bay or something like that. Maybe San Francisco makes a move. I don't know. But yeah, I think they need to do, like I've talked about, the Seattle rebuild, where it's not a full rebuild. You're still going to win games. You're still going to try to be a playoff contender. Probably not going to win a Super Bowl. But you got to trade down in drafts. You got to collect assets. You got to get a good coach. You got to develop players. And then hopefully in 2 years, you're ready. I don't think it's a tear everything down approach. Yes, trading J.J. Watt, who can't stay healthy, is probably a smarter move. I don't think J.J. Watt is a future part of the picture here. So that's going to do it for the podcast. That was really fun. That was a great show. Really excited about this one. I hope you guys enjoyed. Again, guys, you can sign up on Patreon to get access to the mailbag, get access to the weekly picks every week. Please do like the video. Really helps me out. And leave a review for the podcast. And tell your friends about the show as well. That's another great way to support the show. So, again, I appreciate you guys for tuning in today. Banger of a show. And we'll see for picks on Patreon tomorrow and Studs and Duds on Friday.